Hello and welcome to TelecomTV. My name's Martyn Warwick. We are at ONS 2014 and I'm talking with Sarwar Raza of HP. He's Director of Cloud and Software Defined Networking in the Advanced Technology Group. Sarwar, welcome. What is HP's position vis-a-vis SDN?
SDN is actually a very important strategic initiative for HP. We've been at the forefront of SDN development. In fact, our collaboration on OpenFlow and SDN in general began with the Ethane project at Stanford in 2007. We were the first vendor to put out OpenFlow-enabled switches a few years later. And even today, we have the broadest portfolio of switches and routers that support OpenFlow. In addition to that, we have an SDN controller that has been shipping for a little while, and an ecosystem of applications that span from the data center to the campus, and an open SDN app store that was launched last year. So our commitment to SDN as sort of the new paradigm of networking is fairly major.
Much has been made, Sarwar, of the fact that SDN has been driven in the main from the service provider end rather than the manufacturer or vendor end. What, again, is HP's take on that? It's the boots on the other foot, as it were, for once. What effect is that having on the company?
Well, I think that it's fairly refreshing to see users, and bleeding edge users at that, sort of giving direction to vendors on what their requirements are, and especially when these customers are requiring standards-based implementation, it really does put the vendor community sort of on notice and makes us pay attention to the needs of our customers and be able to provide the best value.
Much has also been made of the fact that SDN is open in some ways. Just how and when do you think will open source, open network and open compute actually reshape the network as we know it?
Well, it's happening as we speak, at different speeds across the different spaces. If you look at the success of well-known open source projects like Linux, it used to take 10, 15 years before you would get mainstream adoption. And with the maturity of the governance and the foundations that now support open source programs, you're seeing new products and new projects actually be able to leapfrog and take what used to take 5, 10 years to adoption and shrink that down to a much shorter time frame. So whether it's on the software side with things like OpenStack, which again HP has a major investment in. We run our public cloud entirely on OpenStack, and we have a huge portfolio of products and services being built around OpenStack. Or if you look at what's going on with the open source controller projects in Open Daylight, there is this momentum that in the past would have taken 5, 10 years to reach some sort of critical mass, and it's now happening within the span of quarters. So we think ultimately that open is good for SDN, whether it's open source, open standards, because it levels the playing field and it democratizes the networking industry from the influence of 1 or 2 vendors.
Do you not think it's a possibility, Sarwar, that open source will inevitably become more closed as manufacturers, as they always have done, seek to sort of retrench and sequester to themselves what has always traditionally been theirs? As we said, the boot's on the other foot for the moment, with the service providers dominating the field, as it were. But do you not think in the end it'll come back round to what it was before?
Not necessarily. I think that would depend on what your definition of closed is. So I think that it's very unlikely that that the vast majority of the market will be in a position to consume open source directly from the trunk. It will probably require some element of productization, some element of QA, some level of packaging and value add on the part of vendors. So what you're going to see, most likely, is vendors using an open source core, which of course allows interchangeability, interoperability, and federation across different vendor solutions and across different providers once they get into deployment. But that vendors will add their own secret sauce to it, whether it's in the form of just some spit and polish, or real value add hardware and software. I think what you'll see will be a fairly felicitous sort of integration between vendor solutions and open source solutions.
Now, Sarwar, you're making a presentation here at ONS. What's it about? As far as I'm aware, it's on the potential and future of applications-directed networks enabled by SDN. What does that mean?
So we're going to be talking about what we see as the new paradigm of application-directed networks, and really what we're going to do is talk about the difference between application-aware networks, where today you can have smart middle boxes and services in the network that can look at the traffic traversing the network and then infer some limited context in order to apply policy, versus what we call application-directed networking, where we make use of the now open programmatic capabilities of the network via SDN and the same sort of programmatic and event stream based capabilities and applications to integrate them in such a way that application providers or an ecosystem of vendors or partners can then intelligently link applications directly to the network. So you can have application context injected directly into the network, and it's really the difference between guessing and knowing for sure what the context of a particular communication is.
So with these programmatic interfaces, you say you can directly inject into the data stream or into the network?
So you would be able to program the network to take into account application context. A very good example of this is some of the work we've done with Microsoft, where we have an example on the show floor that it's actually shipping product now, where we are able to tap into the event streams from Microsoft Link and extract calling party information, the type of the call, whether it's voice, video, the identities of the users and their destinations, and their locations rather, and be able to program a network path pretty much customized for that kind of call. So if it's a voice call, you get about this much bandwidth, versus a video call where we will on the fly give you about this much and then tear it back down as needed.
So rather than inferring or guessing, as you said, what's going on, you can know what's going on.
Exactly.
And then provide what's necessary, the resources necessary for whatever that data stream may be.
Exactly.
Okay, Sarwar Raza, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for having me.